My name is Meredith Conti. I am the outgoing Vice President of Research and Publications for ATHA. We have programming both here in the virtual sessions this week, as well as next week in person in Atlanta, so please seek those things out. Today is opportunities in online academic publishing. And the impetus for this was just that we believe that both of our online sections of our journals or spaces for our journals are really vital places for us to continue our work on our scholarship, as well as to be more flexible when it comes to formats. And so we wonderfully have both Taryn Chun and Trevor Buffoni here to talk with you about that. Next week, if you're interested, we also have a Crafting a Successful Journal article session that is on August 3rd in Salon E. And I wish I had, hold on, I do have it. It is at 3 p.m. in Salon E. And so our ATHA journal editors from both Theater Journal and Theater Topics will be talking about basically how to write a successful article, what they're looking at for submissions. And they always do a really helpful Q&A, and they'll have some CFPs with them as well for some of our future issues. So without further ado, take it away. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Meredith. Hi, everyone. I'm Taryn Chun. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Notre Dame, and I'm the current online editor for Theater Journal. You want to do a quick self-introduction too?
Hi, I'm Trevor Buffoni. I'm based in Houston, Texas. I teach at the University of Houston in Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies. And I am the online editor for Theater Topics. And apologies for being late. I'm in Houston and I've had a very interesting 2 weeks. So I'm here.
Yes, thank you for being here. It seems like a rough time to be doing anything other than taking care of life stuff. So, right. So I think that as Meredith sort of introduced, we're here mostly to provide introductions to the landscape of opportunities in academic publishing online, especially with the two journals we work for or with, and also to give everyone who's here a chance to ask questions. I mean, that's, I think, really what the gist of the session will be. But Meredith had asked each of us to sort of say a few words about how we got involved and engaged with digital scholarship in the first place. So Trevor, do you want to start, or I'm happy to either way?
Yeah, I'll go. So I have been doing the digital thing for quite a while. I feel like I did the live journaling back in the day when I was in high school and in undergrad, and so I felt like from a very young age I've been all in on online publishing. And if you can find my live journal from 2004, please don't let me know. But about 10 years ago, I started working with HowlRound, and I worked with Cafe Onda, which was sort of the Latinx theater wing of HowlRound. And so I was doing online publishing in that regard. And then I guess a year ago, I formally moved into this new position new position for me with Theater Topics. And what really excites me about online publications is just the speed. We can move a lot faster than, say, our traditional print publication, especially if you're used to, say, writing books or journal articles. So this has a bit more speed, and also we have the abilities to really integrate different things, more pictures, color pictures. We can do video, sound, any sort of thing that you might not necessarily get in an academic journal, the traditional way that we've been publishing for decades. And so to me, that's exciting. And I think we'll talk about what we're sort of looking for and how we work, but that's sort of my background and what excites me about what we're doing.
Thanks. Yeah, and for myself, I too had a blog back in the day when I was living abroad after college. But I think that I've sort of came to digital scholarship in grad school. I don't use as much in my own work, but I went to grad school at the height of like the exponential uptick in digital humanities interest in our field and in my other field, which is Chinese studies. And so I did a lot of dabbling in various DH projects in graduate school and have tried over the years to implement some methods in my own work. Data gathering in China is very hard, so it has not liked. But along the way, I also got more and more engaged in using virtual platforms for scholarship dissemination. So I worked with the Association for Asian Performance as their sort of IT online officer for a number of years, redesigning the website, helping with pivot to virtual conferencing during the pandemic. And then now in my role with Theater Journal, I'm really interested in augmenting the way that the journal is using the platform to do all the things that Trevor just mentioned, providing a lot of the types of content that we're not able to feature in print journals, like photos, videos, interactive essays, things that can be shared through other platforms, but also, again, with the speed of the turnaround and the fact that, we'll talk more about this, we don't peer review our online content. It gives me the opportunity to mentor emerging voices, folks from other parts of the world who are interested in breaking into North American academic publishing, but maybe don't have quite as much experience. And so I think of it as a way to really provide more opportunities and expand the reach of the journal's content beyond what we're able to feature within the confines of an individual print issue. Not to say that it's limited, but there are some things that paper can't do, can't sing and dance, for example. All right.
Taryn, actually, oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
If you could just stage manage this experience for me, that would be
Yes, I
helpful because I don't
totally
have.
can.
I'm on my phone, so I don't know what's next. I know what I'm supposed to say. I just don't remember the order.
All right. So we were going to talk next about a little bit more of our individual platforms. And so Theater Journal and Theater Topics are both ATHA journals. We actually share a really similar online platform. We both publish with JHUP, Johns Hopkins University Press. So I have both websites pulled up. If you want, we can take a look at them. And we can talk a little bit about some of the things that we've done individually, and maybe with the sites, the types of content we feature. Again, like the things that we're excited about that the website can do and maybe will be able to do at some point in the future. So yeah, do you want me to pull up Theater Topics website, or do you want to talk a little bit first about it?
I'll talk a little bit and then you can show. I don't know that we have as much to brag about on Theater Topics at the moment, but a lot of what I've been working on is, and it's coming up very soon. So for instance, we've had a where are we at? In November, in our November issue, we have a group of scholars who and artists as well who have written letters to their younger selves, and so those pieces are very exciting. We're excited about that, but we have people as young as, or not as young, but as early career as people like just finished their MFAs, like in their 20s, and we also have Marvin Carlson. So I actually it was funny to me, the mentoring young people or emerging scholars, because that is an important part of what I do as well. But I'm also, working with Marvin Carlson, so I feel like I've got the whole field, the span here. But those are exciting pieces, and several of our folks want to do like an audio recording, right? Like a SoundCloud that'll be on the website where they're actually reading to themselves. So it's them at 40 years old talking to themselves at 15. Like, hey, like you're a woman or a young girl who wants to be a fight director or a fight choreographer. You're going to be the only one woman in the room for like 20 years, kind of thing. And so, really interesting advice. Charlotte Canning is another one who has a really interesting, you know, perspective and advice for herself. And so we have the ability to include like pictures from, different stages of life and so on and so forth. So that's something that we're excited about. And that will be in November, the November issue. But I'm also, something I haven't done, but I want to do is find someone. It also takes, I can only give so much of the sort of push, but I really think it'd be fun to have gifts, more gifts. Like really, like think about like how like a BuzzFeed sort of article has like gifts along the way to sort of give you those visual cues. I think that could be fun as well. So anyway, that's what we're working on for our November issue. So we're super excited about that. The things that have come out in July and April, March, April, the spring and the summer are more traditional. We also, not everything is the sexy online publication. Sometimes it's just an online publication of a piece that doesn't necessarily fit into the journal in terms of if there's a thematic issue of the journal, right? The online is an opportunity to have sort of an offshoot or to continue a conversation that happened on in print. So that's happened a few times as well since I've taken over. Is people? It's not a rebuttal so much, but continuing the conversation in a space that doesn't take up space in the print journal.
I love the letters to your past selves idea. I think that's fantastic. And I was also thinking when you're talking about the sort of SoundCloud, one of the things that I think I've been engaging more and more with, again, because I work on Chinese theater, and China has become such a polarized political issue, is the way that online platforms also allow us to become more of public intellectuals. Theater, of course, is already quite a public art, but when you have something like a podcast or a SoundCloud interview or a YouTube link, it's much easier to put that out into the world. It's usually not paywalled. We try to make everything very accessible on our journal sites so that as a scholar, it allows you to then have those materials to engage with other publics than you might in your typical sort of everyday life, either as an academic or as an artist working in a very specific geographic location. So I think that's something too that I'm trying similarly with different types of content to give that as a resource back to our contributors to allow them to engage more broadly as well. So I can screen share so just sort of mechanics wise, one thing to know for both of our sites is that we have both a website. So let's find the theater. This is the theater topic. So we have websites for both theater journal and theater topics that feature online content. But we also publish online articles on Project Muse. And so this is an example of the Project Muse site for the most recent Theater Topics issue, July 2024. And everything that's an online only article appears here as well. And so you can access it via the website, but also you have it in that Project Muse database, which makes it very searchable for people who are, looking for information on the topic. So it's kind of a hybrid actually between the print articles that appear in the scholarly journal databases and a fully and only online website oriented publication. So that's this one. And I can show you sort of, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Oh yeah, I would just add that, and Taryn said it already, but just to reiterate that everything is cataloged in all of these database. It's on Google Scholar, it's on Project Muse, so it would show up in the same way as a print journal article would if you're searching on in these different spaces. So it's not necessarily and ignore that I need to update the website. Ignore that.
Hard to get to. It's on Project Muse though. The latest ones
it's on Project. It shows up in all the searches, but it also, the website gives us another way to share. So it does show up. I know some people have asked me that before, like if it's sort of a different scenario, but no, it will definitely show up in Google Scholar and Project Muse and whatever database that you're looking at.
Yeah. And so, for those of you in the audience who are especially like early career scholars thinking about how do I get some of my work out into the world quickly on the job market, thinking about wanting to share stuff that's really fresh or current, online publishing, not only with our two journals, but in general, is a really good way to do that. Another thing about the pieces that we accept for Theater Journal Online, for example, is they tend to be a little bit shorter, so 1 to 3 or 4,000 words instead of a full-length article. So again, as you are working on learning how to write in an academic mode or a quasi-academic mode, thinking about these shorter form pieces can also be to your advantage because you build some of the skills you need for writing a full-length article, but while working on something that has a quicker turnaround and doesn't take as much of your energy lengthwise and research material wise. So it's something I highly recommend to graduate students or postdocs that, while also working on those full-length peer-reviewed journal articles, this is a great way to get your work out there a little bit faster. And I'm going to stop sharing in a minute. So I just wanted to pull up the theater page as well to show you a little bit. So it's almost identical, same platform. And we have been doing a little bit more by way of video content recently. So one really great example is my predecessor worked on a piece for our 75th anniversary where she interviewed a number of leading scholars in the field about the journal and cut together these really excellent videos. And so I embedded the first one of those, and then the rest are linked and on our YouTube page. And there are also transcripts of the full interviews that Carla conducted. And so this is sort of getting a little bit more into mixed media or multimedia work, in that it exists as a written text that you can find on Project Muse. You can get the full text here, but also in these cut together video compilations. And so these are great for using in teaching or introducing people to the journal and the field. So I highly recommend checking those out. And another thing that we've started to do, and this is something that I'm hoping to continue as long as I'm online editor, is a playlist called TJ Shorts on the ATHA YouTube channel, in which I do like quick 5 to 10 minute interviews with scholars who are publishing full-length articles in our print issue, where they briefly introduce their work, the gist of the article, sort of key takeaways, especially aimed at undergraduate audiences that can be assigned in lieu of or alongside scholarly articles to sort of help students understand what they're reading. And this partly, and then also authors can share on their social media. Again, journal articles are paywalled. This gives a little bit of a preview. So it's trying to do both that public outreach work, but also accessibility for different types of audiences. So that's something that you'll be seeing more of from our platform in the coming months as well. All right, so our next topic, do you have anything else to add on sort of current platform, or we can talk about nuts and bolts now if you want, in terms of like what types of stuff, how to submit.
Yeah, so just one thing that I wanted to add to what you were saying, and I concur, I second everything, is the online pieces, I also want to say, have more flexibility in terms of what the writing looks like or feels like. Because they're not peer reviewed, you're essentially working with Taryn or you're working with me, and we sort of develop what that piece might look like. And so some of the younger, I don't want to say younger, but more early career people I've worked with, it's a relief to sort of not have to be in that box. And then some of the I guess senior scholars I've worked with are having the opposite problem where they're like, wait, how do I break free from the box, right? And they want like an insane amount of feedback. And I'm like, well, your piece is good. Like it has the right tone. Like, in terms of these letters to their younger selves, like it should feel casual, right? In that sort of scenario or that setting. So anyway, that's one thing, is just it's an opportunity to sort of write in a different way. And also write with less pressure to cite everything, right? I'm not sure if that's the best way to say that, but it's a place where you can sort of develop an argument or a conversation without having to exhaustively cite the field. And that's not to say we're not citing anything, but it's just a bit more freedom to sort of tell a story. And another thing I've had a bunch of people do is use this as a space to sort of have that 1,000, 2,000 word, 1,500 word sort of offshoot of a project. So, we're writing, you have your dissertation chapter, your book chapters, and there's that little thing that you have nowhere to put, nothing to do with it. This is a good place to put it, a place to have that conversation that adds to your body of work, that adds to the conversation of the book, that's highly teachable, but doesn't necessarily force you to add 5,000 words or go through this exhaustive sort of peer review process. And the other thing I'll add to, and I've never been edited by Taryn, but I'm convinced that she is like me and is very supportive. But when you submit to us, we want to work with you. We want to help you improve your story, help you improve your writing. We want to really get it. We want it in our journal. We want it in our online section. So I find that the feedback we're giving you, the way we're working with you is more supportive than you're going to get if you anonymously, or I guess it's, yeah, anonymously submit to, a peer reviewed journal article process. Um, so that's something to just keep in mind is we're friendly and we want you to succeed because your success is our success.
Yes, I aspire to embody all of that as well. That's the people I've edited. If I'm actually succeeding, I don't know, but I certainly think that that's one of the things that I think as editors we're freed a little bit by not having to also go through the peer review processes. We can work on a piece for longer or shorter depending on what it needs. There's not a really strict timeline as long as we can fit it in one of the issues that's coming out in a given year. And so if a piece needs a little bit more, we can give it that and bump it to the next issue. I'm sure that happens with print articles too, but because we're quite flexible in terms of how much we publish, there's no like max really on a website. I suppose if I submitted 10, maybe our managing editor might be a little bit flummoxed, but we really can be quite flexible in terms of like how we work with our authors, and I find that really fun. Maybe we can talk a little bit more just quickly nuts and bolts wise about like what that process and timeline looks like. What I've just said, it's super flexible and fun. For theater topics, what is your typical like cycle of receiving a submission or an inquiry and then moving it towards eventual publication and posting?
This is my favorite question because I have a email from our editor, Suzanne Schauer, where I refer to it every time I think about it. Because I'm like, wait, what's the timeline? So essentially, I'll talk about right now. So the November issue, I have to have everything sent to our copy editor by July. So the timeline is still, it takes a bit of time, but in terms of, for these pieces, I had them due to me by end of May. In June, we did a little, second round edit sort of thing. And then I sent everything off like 2 weeks ago. So I try to work like a year. So like right now, like we might hang up this and I will start to try to find people to submit for next July and follow up with those requests for the March, April issue. That's if I am soliciting. So sometimes I'm soliciting where I'm trying to make sure that we have, voices that are representative of many different people and different styles of theater and types of places where people work, career stages, identity markers, all of those things. But a lot of times people submit to us. So sometimes um, if you submit just the regular sort of, I'm submitting to theater topics, we have a or editorial board meeting once a month ish. And it depends on how many submissions we're getting, but we meet once a month, once every 2 months, and we discuss the submissions. And so, this note might be better online. This note might be better in print. This note is not the right fit for our journal. Let's suggest theater top journal. Let's submit or let's suggest like HowlRound, right? Or and so we sort of have that sort of editorial board process. So you can submit online the traditional way that you might submit a peer-reviewed print piece. But also a lot of it's very informal. Like people will email me and say, "Hey, I have a pitch," as if you were sending a pitch to HowlRound American Theater or The Conversation or whatever online publication. So people will submit pitches to me, and we sort of work through it. I will say a lot of times the pitches don't seem like they make sense for the journal. So my advice, one piece of advice would be to definitely, if you're writing a pedagogy piece, a piece about directing, teaching, um, practice, then maybe it goes to me and not Taryn, right? Theater topics and not theater journal. But we do sometimes get pitches that just seem um, like the person has not necessarily looked into what the journal actually publishes. So that's something just to kind of remember when you're thinking about this, because there's also, for designers, there's design journals. There are stage management journals. There's all sorts of things that are out there, and so we want to make sure that your piece goes to the right spot. And so there's all these different ways that that happens. But in general, if you want to publish with theater topics, emailing me, reaching out to me is probably the smoothest way to do it, the least sort of hoops, because sometimes when you submit to the online through the online portal, it just takes a bit longer for that conversation to start. So if you submit to me directly, then it can start immediately.
Yeah, thank you. And I was just thinking, as you were mentioning other kinds of journals, that I think a lot of the general advice about online publishing being a useful thing doesn't just apply to our two platforms. But of course, we can speak most directly to how things work and why you should try to publish with us. I think for a theater journal, the timeline is slightly different because our year of publishing are two general issues in March and June, and then two themed special issues in September and December. And so the call for online content for the special issues goes out about, let's see, yeah, more than a full year in advance, with the content due sort of at least 6 months in advance of the issue. And then for the general issues, similarly, an email with an idea or a proposal anytime directly to me is probably the best way to go. And I think that also allows this kind of developmental process where if you send something fully written and fully fledged, it might not be doing quite the right thing for theater journal. But if you send me an email, then we can have a conversation about framing and whether or not or how it might fit with what we have going on. Yes, and I will put my email in the chat as well. Especially if you're thinking about something like a multimedia or alternative format, that's something I'm very eager to work on. But we don't have as clear of a standard yet for things like what is the publication timeline for a video essay? How does the editorial intervention work with that? We're still developing that as a field, I think. And so the earlier the communication, the better, because then, you don't spend a lot of time working up something that I then have to say no to because it doesn't quite work with what we're doing already for a given issue. And then also, if you are publishing a full-length article with Theater Journal, I always reach out to authors once their articles have been officially accepted to see if authors want to provide any supplementary content. So that might be video clip to something as simple as that, or one of these TJ Short interviews, or even that kind of like 1,000-word extra archival find that didn't fit into the piece, but you really want to share with the world. All of that is fair game. And so that happens on a pretty compressed timeline because it can only really get started after your article's been fully accepted. So that tends to be a quick turnaround kind of a thing, but that is out there for those of you who are thinking of submitting those full-length articles to the journal. You can also publish something in the same issue online.
Yeah, and what's really great about having, I mean, I love the TJ Shorts, that's great, is it also gives you multiple things to share. We've all been in that position where we publish an article and you share it to Facebook or whatever, wherever you're active, and that's sort of your one time you can share. So in this regard, you have the article you share, and then a few weeks later, you can share the YouTube video or the online link or whatever it might be, and it doesn't feel it feels organic, and it's you're getting more eyeballs on your content.
Yes, we live in a world where that's it, right? We need eyes on our content. The irony is I'm actually extremely bad at social media. I should really learn more of that, but I do want to provide authors with tools to be able to have more of that presence online. Okay, I think unless you have anything else on that sort of like submission process, Trevor, the one thing that Meredith had asked us to touch on before we open it up is like our visions for the future of our platforms. You've touched on that a little bit already, but are there things that you're particularly excited about in terms of like new formats, or want to especially encourage submissions related to either format or topic wise, or things that are coming up that you want people to keep an eye out for?
Absolutely. I mean, part of the challenge of this position is I can have all of the ideas in the world, but it takes an author who wants to sort of push the boundaries of what this can look like for us to sort of go there. And so I would love to see submissions or people that want to do video essays, or think about like a TikTok series, right? Where they go through some sort of argument or conversation in 10 TikTok videos and we can put them all up on the website. So any sort of thing, a video essay, right? Not video, a picture essay. What do you call that? Y'all know what I'm trying to say. Like photography, and we're telling a story through photography. And so if anyone has any sort of outside the box ideas, our platforms are really places where you can test those ideas out in a way that is legible for our universities as well. Even though it's not peer reviewed, it's still theater topics, it's still theater journal, which holds some weight in a theater department. And so that's something to consider. Um, it might not be the same as, that peer reviewed article, but it's going to look better than, say, something on um, a non academic online platform. So if you have ideas that are outside the box, we are the people to talk to.
Yes, 100%. And something that I'm looking forward to getting started in the next sort of cycle of journal issues is we're going to start featuring an emerging voices kind of column or section. And so again, to go back to those of you who might be earlier in your careers or feel like you're maybe not early career, but entering a new area of research, this is somewhere where I'd like to highlight both underrepresented areas of the field, but also voices that might not be making peer-reviewed sections of journals just yet. And so that's something that we're going to try to spotlight, as well as any and all exciting new format content. Please definitely just send an email to either of us. We're more than happy always to have a conversation about how to make something work for the platform. All right, I think that's kind of my list of prepared things. Do you have anything else, Trevor, before we open it up for Q&A?
No, I'm ready for some Q&A.
Yeah. All right. So we have an audience. What questions do you all have about either theater topics or theater journals, online platforms, or just online publishing or engagement in general?
Thank you all for this. I somehow have not realized how much our major journals are doing online content. So it's really exciting to get to hear about this. I was a little bit late, so I apologize deeply if you said this already and I missed it, but I think you both were mentioning, like, if you need to get your work out kind of quickly because you're going on the market, or, are these online pieces fully peer reviewed? Do they count as peer reviewed publications? Or in terms of that kind of scaffolding of our publishing labor, right? For those kinds of dots, how does that fit into the puzzle?
Yeah, so these are not peer-reviewed pieces. You work directly with either myself or with Taryn. What makes it faster is the not having the peer review. So if you submit to Theater Journal, I don't know about Theater Journal. If you submit to Theater Topics, the traditional way, it all goes into a pool of like a folder, and then we have an editorial board meeting every month or so where we talk through those submissions. We read them all beforehand. We talk through the submissions. We make recommendations for peer reviewers if we're going to send it out for peer review. Sometimes we think it would be stronger if it had another round of edits before it went for peer review. So we give concrete, look at this, look at that, look at that. Or we might recommend it to a different journal. And the same thing happens for print notes that are in the print issue. What makes online faster is you can email me directly, you can email Taryn directly, and we sort of get that conversation going much faster. Because we don't have peer review, like I am your reviewer essentially, and sometimes, you know, um, I have people I can reach out to if I need a second opinion or help, but usually I'm the person that's editing with you. And so it just sort of streamlines the whole process. So I don't know how much faster it is, but to me, it seems much faster than the print version of Theater Topics. Now, again, like part of what to consider is what you need out of the publication. If you need that peer-reviewed journal article, then do not submit to the online section. But if you have something you want to work on, if you have something that sort of fits the bill, and it's also going to take less time of your energy because it's 1,000 words. I don't think I've had anything over 2,000 words. Like 1,500 is a nice number, and so it's taking less time to write it as well. So that's the theater topic side of things.
So it almost sort of seems like lengthwise, relationship with editor wise, there's a lot of similarities to how like a book review or a performance review in a print journal is engaged in process, but there's more flexibility in terms of the kinds of topics that you want to pursue in that sort of shorter format, more intimately working with an editor kind of context.
Yes, I would say 100%.
Yeah, and I think too, had mentioned earlier is the kind of voice of the piece as well, where sometimes journal article publishing can feel a bit more sort of boxed into a certain genre of writing. We have a lot of flexibility in terms of, how you want to frame and talk about. So if you feel that you have something you want to say that is highly personal, for example, that can be a little harder to do in a full-length peer-reviewed article. It's not impossible, but it can be a little bit trickier. Whereas in the online publishing sphere, like that's very a personal reflection on a piece that, a piece of your research is something that fits very well. More poetic tones also can fit. So I think that's, again, like where we have a little bit more flexibility, and not being bound by peer review can actually be an advantage. That said, it totally depends on where you are in your trajectory. Very early on, it can be anything on the CV is really good. If you're on the tenure track and you're trying to sort of hit the bar within 6 to 7 years for tenure, then again, maybe it's something you do adjacent to a peer-reviewed article rather than standalone. It also just depends on institute. I do think the fact that these online sections are indexed with Theater Topics and Theater Journal, and we are some of the top journals in the field, does mean that it matters more than, say, publishing a blog entry on your personal website. But it's not going to have that same stamp of approval, as it were, as the peer review process gives you on the CV. Yeah. Also, it's a different kind of feedback because we're not going to be experts in your field. So we can help you with the writing and the voice in the audience, but it's not the same sort of detailed response you'll get from a peer reviewer who's in your area of study. And we have 2 of our editors on the call as well. So if you want to move beyond the online sphere and put them on the spot, they might be willing to answer some questions too. But we have some comments in the chat as well from Laura and Suzanne about the journal's timelines for peer-reviewed articles. Other questions? Go ahead.
Question, just grateful to begin to explore what the different types of formats might look like and how that might open up to new scholarship, regardless of the level of peer review, in terms of how that is helping particularly those colleagues who are practitioners and practice this research. And so I'm excited to investigate that a little bit further, just on a personal note. So thank you for this.
Something I will say from my HowlRound days is something that was a challenge for a lot of non-writers, people that writing is not their first way of expressing themselves, is having an online publication can go a long way for people that are designers, costume designers, lighting designers, um, scenic designers, properties managers, like all of these people that are creating art in a way that is extremely visual. Um, an online publication or online section of theater topics can be a really great place to sort of showcase your work because we can see video of the lighting design, show us what the sound design looks like. I recently did, this is not for theater topics, I also work in social media, and I work with a theater, and we actually showed the sound design. I had a video of the scene, and then I had this sort of sound file of that scene transition, and the sound designer, it showcased their work. And so there's a lot of opportunities on theater topics online to really showcase these sort of visual arts, right? These sort of the movement, the colors, the all of the things that go into doing design work. So that's something I'd love to see as well in the future. And Valerie's comment reminded me of that.
Laura put a question in the chat, I think is for us, but also we could ask the audience for their ideas. A dream big question. What would you like to do with the online platforms if you had access to unlimited resources? I think Laura knows my answer to this question already. Trevor, do you have an answer to this question?
I think one of the constraints is time. I mean, this is, I don't know about Taryn's life, but this is a small part of what we do. And I think if I had more time, I could do more things. And so that's sort of my dream is like, this would be cool if it was like a full-time position. I mean, maybe not full time, but just having more opportunity or more time to really uh, lean into the different stuff and the video and all of those different things. I also think it would be fun, and maybe this is something that is doable, you know, is have a more video centered social media channel. I mean, I know Taryn's doing that, but what I mean is sort of like an Instagram account that leans into the reels. So short videos with scholars talking about their work, or when we go to conferences, really documenting like, hey, we're at ATHA, we're at Esther, talking to people. Yeah, Valerie knows what I do because I do the TikTok, I do all the reels. That's sort of my bread and butter, but it's very, you know, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of time, and you sort of need not necessarily like money resources, but just the time around it to be able to do it well. But that's something I think could be really fun is really getting. So I do this a lot. I do this scholarship on social media, like on TikTok, talking about my scholarship. And very few people in our field are doing this, right? Academics, and this is across academia, I think, but especially even in theater performance studies, very few professors and academics are talking about their research in a video format on social media. And so what Taryn's doing is great with the YouTube shorts, and I think there's opportunity to do even shorter. I guess they're not YouTube shorts, but the theater journal shorts. But there's opportunity to really go a bit deeper and connect with more people. Because what we do is, you know, we know this. We're all creating these really smart things and we're sharing them with each other, but we all want our work to be able to be engaged with by people from more walks of life. And especially in the theater, we want practitioners to engage with our work as well in a lot of cases. But what we write is not always accessible. And so I think having this video component can really go a long way.
I love that idea. I mean, I think sort of what I would say, because I am one of the scholars who's a little skittish about videoing myself all the time. So I would love to hire some younger folks to do this at conferences and events, because I feel like I'm sort of a generation too old to be super comfortable walking around with my phone TikToking all the time. But I know there are grad students out there who do it. I mean, kudos to you. I don't know. TikTok came along and I was like, I can Instagram, but not TikTok. I don't know why, but it's my social media bridge too far. But I think that enabling others to do that and encouraging it is like something I see as really important in my current role. So like resources to be able to hire grad students to do things like that at conferences, putting them on the organization or the journal feeds. And Laura knows that I would like a complete redesign of the Theater Journal website. That's what I would put my money towards, precisely so we can better feature video, audio, scalar and multimedia article content. And again, like have more of a linkage between the different platforms, because right now we've got the ATHA YouTube, we have our journal website, and we can embed videos, but we're not really synced across platforms in, I think, a deep and meaningful way. And if we were able to do that, again, we could help our authors to amplify their work and be more creative in how they put their work out there, I think, in a little bit more successfully than maybe we're doing right now.
Yeah, and it's something you mentioned. I'm taken back 10 years or more to my early conference days. And I remember I would work the registration booth, right? I think it was at ATHA, and I would get money off of my conference.
Oh
So
yeah,
perhaps,
that's the best deal in
right.
town.
And I remember one year, I think it was Quebec, Montreal, I literally, they were like, here's a camera, go take pictures of people. And I like went and they were doing the yoga. It was like the 8 a.m. yoga session. And I like went in and I was like, is this okay? And they were like, take pictures of us doing yoga. We're theater people. And so, maybe in the future, there's a chance for like, one slot to be an application situation where someone wants to be like the social media, like TJ Theater Topics person, and they create some content for us. So instead of say work 10 hours of the conference, it's like working 10 hours of the conference to create this sort of online content.
I love that. I wish we need to make sure that this gets back to the conference planners. Yes. We have another question in the chat. Since the inception of your online platforms, to what extent have you seen online content be an incubator or pipeline to the hard copy journals, and any anecdotes to share with the above? That's a really good question. Can you think of any cases, Trevor, in
Yeah.
your editing?
So I mean, keep in mind, I don't know. I think Taryn, did you start last year as well? Yeah. So we haven't been
Yeah.
in these positions for that long, but I will say that I have one piece that came out. It's a co-authored piece, and those two people, I don't know if they're here right now, but they sort of were using this as a testing ground to one, see if they wanted to continue to write together, like if they had that sort of energy. And I know they're continuing the relationship. And so this could be a good place to sort of test out the idea of co-authoring. Um, I know that that's not the first thing we think of with your question. I know that's probably not what people think of, but I've co-authored with some really great people and had some great relationships. And I've co-authored with people where I wanted to like leave the field after. Like I'm gonna go anything else except for doing this. And so this could be a really good space to sort of try out that relationship. And I haven't had it yet with this position, but in general, I've always felt that you want to get the most out of everything you're doing, everything you're writing, everything you're presenting. So it's never just a journal article. It's how can I make this a conference presentation or an invited talk somewhere? Um, Also, like an offshoot online thing. So, like, when we publish books, we're very much used to sort of doing the online writing, right? I'm writing for the conversation, for HowlRound, for the blog of the press, right? Those are normal things. But I think we can look at that as well with journal articles, right? If you have sort of think about this, if you're going to write a article on, I don't know, I wanted to have an example on this coffee cup, and you're going to do your like smart analysis journal article on the coffee cup. Maybe the online piece with us is the interview with the person who designed the coffee cup, right? So it's not, you're not repeating the same thing, but you're adding to the conversation. And a lot of times we're doing interviews with these folks anyway. And this is just a way to sort of tell that story and publish that in a different place. And that interview could be a Zoom. It could be a video, right? It doesn't have to be a print only interview, but there's ways to sort of build out the scholarship and sort of develop ideas. And I've also, one more example, is you interview the person about the coffee cup because you just find them fascinating, and you do that online, and then you see if there's an interest or your own interest or energy around writing an article about that. So it can be multiple things.
Yeah, and I'd say so. I've also only been doing this for just about a year, but I think that initially the online space for Theater Journal was a little bit more of a supplement to what was already coming out in the print issues. And so it's mostly functioned on the other end. So rather than incubating a piece, extending it out. So an interview that complements it, or another piece of archival work, or that sort of thing. A shorter blog style version of the article for a more popular audience. And so I'm hoping, though, that especially by starting a kind of emerging voices stream, that we're pushing more in the incubator direction so that it can have that function as well as the complementary or supplementary function to the pieces that are already coming out. I think it can be a little bit tricky. I think it's a great idea, but also it's always scary to put one's work out there. And so the idea of using a public platform as an incubator, I think, is a really productive one, but will function better if we are set up to create dialogue through the platform, rather than just lobbing a piece out into the world and having it kind of be more passively received. And so that's another reason why I think the social media connections, the video pieces, these are ways to generate buzz and interest in conversations. And that's what would enable a piece to really move from that sort of nascent 2,000 word kernel of something into the full-fledged, ready for peer review article form. And then we've got a comment from Suzanne about the sort of dialogue or constellation space. Thank you.
Well, think about this too. If you are writing a book or an article and you're heavily engaging with, like, say I'm writing something, and I'm heavily engaging with Taryn's theory of coffee cup. Um, maybe it's like competing ideas. Like Taryn thinks it's a teacup, I think it's a coffee cup. And maybe there's an online piece where we actually talk to each other about it. Like we like sort of like a fun debate, uh, conversation with each other. Like there's opportunity to sort of bridge a lot of the things that or draw connections in ways that we're not used to doing in academia. Um, so I think that could be fun, you know.
Yeah, and we're seeing in our upcoming September issue, we also have a good example of like a group constellated at a conference that then has split off into individual articles and other sort of projects, and then is coming back together for a Zoom roundtable that will be published in print on the website. And so I do think that's what that sort of connective tissue. It doesn't necessarily have to be, as Susanna is saying, like linear, but how do you use the space to create a conversation around an issue that you're interested in? And so that's actually something that I think would be great to propose, is like, I'm working on this new topic, coffee cups, coffee or tea cup. And I know there are 5 other people out there who are interested in this ontology of cupness. And we maybe would do a panel or a working session at a conference, but also maybe having a Zoom roundtable and putting it out there either as video or as a print roundtable, or a combination of the two, then helps do that same thing in the conference off season, right? It could happen anytime. It doesn't have to happen at the end of July or in November or whenever besides Athens and Astor, wherever your conferences might be. So I think that's another way to think about how you might creatively use the space to have a conversation that's related to and of interest to your work, but then also would be meaningful for the broader community, and then keep those conversations going in other venues and formats.
Yeah, it doesn't always have to be let's edit a book. Let's edit a collection, which I've done. I've done it.
Oh yeah,
But there's other
yeah,
right.
same.
Yeah, we've all done it. Or I don't know if we've all done it, but that's sort of the default that we are trained to think. Like this needs to be a book, it needs to be an edited collection. And there are conversations that don't need to take years to come out. Um, and so, this is a place where you can do that in a sort of faster way with support. And also, one thing I'll add, I don't know that I've seen it with my year with theater topics, but I've done it myself. Is if I am sort of in the process of a longer project and I want to get the idea out there to sort of, this sounds very like territorial, like claim it. Like this is a space where you can claim it, right? So a project I'm working on with Danielle Rose Valley is called Yassified Shakespeare, and we're still writing the book. But as we all know, the book will take years to come out. But one of the first things we wrote, Janet knows it, Valerie knows it, is was for an online section of Borrowers and Lenders, which is a Shakespeare journal. And we wrote, it was a 1,500 word piece where we're like, this is the topic, these are some things we're thinking about, and it's out in the world. So it's indexed, and we sort of have claimed that this is something we're doing. And so that can be another way to use our two journals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like one of the things that's just even like just from this conversation emerging for me and would encourage everybody to think about are the many ways that online publishing and engagement can expand your scholarship. It can help you to develop something, can help you to amplify something, it can help you to move in a new direction. So there are so many different things that the platforms can do. And as editors in this space, it's really exciting because we get ideas brought to us sometimes, often, and that's part of the fun is keeping expanding, building on the ideas that are coming out of potential authors. So I certainly cannot claim credit for all of the cool things that are happening in the online space, and look forward to like the future being very much built on new, fresh ideas, innovations coming out of authors who are like, hey, this thing sounds cool. Is it possible to make it happen? All right, any other questions? We technically have until 1:30, but I do not think we are obligated to stay on Zoom for another half hour unless there are other topics or questions. Oh, so Suzanne asked, if someone has only a vague idea of something, can they reach out to us to bat around ideas of how it might work online? Yeah, absolutely. I will admit that I am not always the super fastest on responding to that particular type of email, but I do get back to everybody eventually. So if I don't respond immediately, just email me. As Trevor said, this is one of many things that we do. And so it is sometimes a challenge, I think, to keep on top of all of the emails, but I do my best, and I'm sure Trevor does too. So yes, email us. And if we don't reply, email us again.
Yeah, and also, I'm on my phone. I don't know who's here. I know Janet's here and Valerie's here, but I'm not sure. But everyone here, I would encourage you to submit or to tell people who have a good piece, or students to submit to us. I mean, we're always looking for submissions, and we want our online sections, to be more robust and really tell the stories that are out there in our field. So submit to us, submit to us, submit to us.
All right, I will ask for questions or final comments one more time in case there are any lingering out there. But otherwise, I think we might wrap in just a minute or two. Anyone else? I'm doing my teaching counting to 10, right? Okay, well, yes, Joe, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'll put my email in the chat one more time, and Taryn's email is much shorter, so I'm jealous of you at the moment.
I'm also one of the few Tarens on the internet, so if you can remember how to spell my name, you can find me pretty easily. I do not know of any other Tarens with two R's who also study Chinese theater, so.
There you go.
All right, well, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Trevor, for signing on in the middle of chaos and recovery. Thank you, everybody, for the questions. We hope this was useful. Yeah, any parting words, Trevor?
No, thank you to everyone who's here. Thank you, and thank you to Taryn. Thank
you all so much. Send us your questions. We look forward to meeting you online or in person at some point, and yeah, hope to see some content from you in the near future.